Well, howdy doody folks, and welcome to Mower Mike's Garage. Today we are going to be slinging some engines, so strap in. We're going to show you how to install an engine on a riding lawnmower. Specifically, I got this Briggs Stratton 15 horse vertical shaft single cylinder engine, which I just rebuilt and did way too many videos on. And we're going to go ahead and drop it into this John Deere little mini Zeroturn, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Now, I know a lot of y'all are like, whoa, Mower Mike, this might be fun to watch you hurt yourself installing an engine, but I ain't gonna do it. Well, trust me, this is no Corvette engine. This is really not that hard. These lawnmower engines are essentially 4 bolts, and they all have the same bolt pattern. So this process applies to pretty much any riding lawnmower, Zeroturn. They all bolt in the same way. There might be a couple little differences underneath her, but not a big deal. All right, and one thing I'm going to point out, just as a warning, a lot of y'all have just rebuilt your engine. A lot of you have bought a new engine. Please make sure to put oil in the engine before you do anything. Don't be like me, who back in the day put a brand new Honda engine on a trencher without any oil and burned it up and pissed off my boss. Yep, that was not cool. All right, so the first step, of course, is to lift said motor and throw it in the rear end of the engine. You're gonna notice it's got a crankshaft sticking out the bottom. So just throw your hips in it. They are a little heavy. This one's about 40 pounds. And just stick the shaft in the big hole. All right. This is definitely not the way to do it, but. All right. Yeah, come on. What a great YouTube shot. You saw all that, right? All right, let's go ahead and zoom in. I'm gonna show you what I got going on here, and we're gonna bolt her up. Well, I bet you thought I missed, but nope. I got it placed on the lawnmower. So our first step, we're going to roughly line up the lawnmower. So what you're looking at, you're looking for these holes here in the oil pan. You're gonna see some drilled and tapped holes in there. So these are going to line up to holes in the base of the mower frame, and all the mower frames should have holes that will line up. You might have some extra ones like this, but you can see how they're lining up. And at a high level, what we're going to do, you're going to take these bolts here. They're threaded bolts. They slide up here. They're going to go through the hole and bolt the mower to the frame. And you're going to notice you're going to have 3 bolts like this, but most of the mowers, you're going to have 1 bolt, a smaller bolt that slides all the way through there. And what you want to do with that bolt, that's going to be a grounding strap bolt. So you want to look at the back of the mower where all the electronics are coming in and find your grounding strap. I think it's one of these. All right, so we're going to bolt up these 3 and then leave this back one open, and then we'll show you the grounding strap bolt after that. So stay with me. All right, we've got a great shot underneath the engine. And you can see, I want to go ahead and bolt it up before we hook up any pulleys or electrical crap. So you can see the bolt holes there, and you just want to start threading her in there. And go inverted. Yes, sir. All right, and when you tighten it, go ahead and tighten it. I like to hand tighten it with just a hand wrench. Now, I'm a big believer in air tools, but you've got to remember, these bolts are bolting into an aluminum oil pan. So you really don't want to strip these suckers out. So when you tighten them, make them tight, but I would not say super duper tight. All right, she's getting there, getting home. Now you may be wondering why I'm just doing an install video. Well, I'm a man, and most men know how to take shit apart, but we don't know how to put it back together. So I figure I'd help us all out. All right, now when you go to tighten them the final time, I like to go ahead and use a torque wrench. You can just hand tighten them on there, but a torque wrench, usually a good idea. And the torque setting on these going into aluminum is about 19 to 20 pounds. It's pretty common across all engines. So I got my fancy dancy Craftsman torque wrench, and you can see it's really not a whole lot of torque. All right, so I'm gonna bolt up this one, that one, the other side, and then we're gonna go from the top deck side, and we're gonna bolt that last bolt. So stay with me. All right, now we're going to bolt on the last bolts. I've got the other 3 bolts loosely tightened. You don't want to tighten it up too much because you wiggle this thing around. We're gonna go at the very end and tighten them all up. Now this one is different, so let's find her down there. Oh, there it is, right there, that little hole. And this one's different. We're going to use a bolt on this one because this is where our ground strap goes. You're going to find the ground strap. Now this is a thick negative wire connected directly to the battery right next to it. And before we do this, make sure your connector is nice and clean. Also, I like to put a little Dilectode silicone grease on there just to help the connection. And then we're just going to bolt her home. Now the bolt we're using is an M8 by 1.25 by 1.5 inch bolt. And you just slide her in there. Now a note on these bolts. Some people don't believe in using the tap bolts and screwing directly into the engine because you're screwing directly into an aluminum base. So an upgrade option, you can replace all of the screws with these M8 grade 8 bolts, and that way you can tighten them down more and there's probably a better chance of them not coming off. I'll leave that one up to you for now. I'm just using what she came with. So I'm gonna go around and torque all these guys to about 20 foot-pounds, and then we're gonna slide back underneath her and tighten up everything else and get our pulleys on. So stay with me. Next, we're gonna install the pulley and the PTO. This will be a bit of a challenge, but I think I got it. Now, the belts you're gonna see, you can install them with the belts already on there, but just for simplicity purposes, I'm gonna keep the belts down. First thing you're gonna do is the drive belt pulley, this guy here. I'm thinking it goes this way. Remember, there's going to be a key in there, and that key's gonna line up with the key slot on your crankshaft. So just spin it until you find your key slot and slide her on up there like so. Hopefully it doesn't fall down like that one. And then next you got your PTO, this big sucker. This is the clutch that drives, oh gosh, it drives the actual drive belt itself. So just line it up. It is a little heavy. And then just try to find the hole, which I'm struggling with here. All right. And then you're gonna spin it just like the other. And hopefully you're gonna find her home. Now, just to hold it up there, take your bolt and go ahead and just hand tighten it up in there a little bit. Well, which I cannot do because I don't have it all lined up yet. Son of a bitch. All right. All right. This is a bit of a challenge to do while on TV. All right, come on. There it goes. All right. Whew, you've got to turn it till you find where it pushes up on the crankshaft and that sucker slides on in there. Now, you want to do it also, sometimes you're going to have a little rod, like this guy right here. Well, you're all going to have a little rod. I didn't mean it like that. All right, you're gonna have a rod sticking down. That slides into this little slot here. So I'm actually gonna have to take this thing back down in order to get it on that slot. So I'm gonna do that off camera and get very dirty, and then we're gonna come back and talk about the bolt. All right, folks, I had to do a lot of wiggling, but I got it slid up there. You wanna make sure everything's slid up to the top and that you've got everything, all the keys slid all the way on there. Now you'll notice the whole outside of this thing turns. So in order to line up that key shaft, I had to turn the very bottom of it where you've got that big thick washer looking thing. And eventually I found the hole and slid it up there. Now, just want to point out one of the hardest things on this job is getting your little holder in the slit of the PTO. And you see right there, these things are just a pain. So I had to slide the PTO on there and then bolt that thing on there afterwards because there was no doing it all at one time. So with that, go ahead and snap in your electrical connector to the PTO. And you're gonna notice, like Mike, we are, come on, slide on in there. There it goes. Now you'll notice we have not tightened this bolt yet on the very bottom. That's because as soon as you turn that sucker, the whole top of the engine is going to turn. So you have a couple choices. Here you can actually tighten it with an air wrench or a battery powered wrench to get enough torque on it. But if all you have is a hand tool, we're gonna go up top and I'm gonna show you a way to freeze up the engine so then we can torque that sucker down tight and make sure she's spinning belts. All right, folks, we are back up top and what I'm gonna show you is a rope trick. Yes, sir. In order to freeze the motor, we need to put something down here, which is the spark plug hole. That's gonna push against the piston and allow everything to freeze on the inside. So what I do, I get myself a piece of rope and make sure the tip of it, light it up, make sure it's nice and clean. And you're just gonna start shoving that down into the hole where the piston goes. And as you shove it in there, just go ahead and turn the top fan of the motor and just keep shoving as much as possible in there. And what you're doing, you're filling up the cylinder itself with rope. All right, this one is taking a lot of dang rope. All right, and just put as much as you can in there. She's filling up now. Never actually seen one take this much rope. All right, surely that's enough. And then just start spinning the top. And as you spin the top, you'll notice that it freezes at one point because you've got so much rope in there that it's compressed against the cylinder head and it's pushing down against the piston and freezing the whole motor. So now we can slide back underneath and tighten down that bolt with everything not spinning on us. All right, folks, we are back underneath it. We're gonna go ahead and torque down this bolt. And you can see if it spins a little, just keep cranking it and you'll get it eventually. Now, usually I just use an air ratchet on this thing and just use air ratchet torque, and I've never had an issue, but this time I'm actually gonna torque it down. I Googled online, it looks like most of the, oh my gosh, my whole lawnmower fell off the lift. I am okay, folks. So let me reset. All right, folks, before we go any further, I have to address some safety concern. As you see right there, what happened is the whole lawnmower slid off my jack. That is definitely not the proper way to jack these things up. I will have a follow-on video that show you proper ways to jack up lawnmowers. It's very tricky, especially with Zeroturns, because the front wheels will pivot on you, even if you put blocks in front and behind them. So just be careful. You can actually do this job without jacking up the lawnmower, which is how I'm going to continue this video. So excuse the pause. Let's slide back underneath this John Deere and get her strapped up. All right, folks, we're gonna try this again, just at a little lower altitude. Sorry that the shot is not nearly as good. So let me langle this thing up. But essentially what we're doing, you're just tightening this bad boy up. Come on. Gosh, that freaking hurt and it scared me. So folks, just be careful working on these lawnmowers because they can really hurt you if you're messing around and don't know what you're doing and don't have a secure stand on it. This thing is really taking a lot of torque. All right, that's tight enough. All right, that's how you tighten her up. Next, I'm gonna take a break and then we're gonna go back up top and finish this job. All right, folks, next we get to do the fun, easy part. Yep, hooking up the electrical. This is the easiest electrical hookup you'll ever hook up. All right, so you're gonna have the wire, the starter wire. This comes from the starter solenoid and it goes on a little nub on the bottom of the starter. And you just tighten this sucker down. You can always put a little grease on there, and that's a 7/16 little nut, and just tighten her on down. All right, and then you're going to have your main electrical connection. And you can see, ooh, looks a little nasty. Couple of notes. It's always good to kind of clean these things off. I got a little carb cleaner in there. Make sure they're nice and clean. Now, your electrical connectors, if you're swapping a Briggs with a Briggs, it's always going to be the same connector. If you're doing a Kohler to Kohler, Kawasaki to Kohler. Now, where you run into issues if you're swapping from, if it originally had a Briggs and Stratton engine and you're swapping to a Kohler engine, then your electrical harness will not match up. Same with Kawasaki. So you can even swap, like for example, if this originally had a two-cylinder motor, you can swap on a one-cylinder. As long as it's the same brand, they're all going to swap up. Now, any model engine is going to bolt to the bottom of this sucker, but the key is the brand with the wire harness. All right, enough jib and jabber. Let's go to the other side and hook up the fuel. All right, so next we're going to talk fuel line routing real quick. Now, your mower probably has one of these fuel pumps on it, strapped on the side. Now, it's going to have 3 outlets to it. If you can see coming out the bottom, that where it has the single nub, that goes to the carburetor. Sometimes it's pointing up. And then you've got the other 2. One of them is going to go to a breather tube. This one goes to a breather tube over on the oil dipstick tube. Sometimes they go to a breather tube hooked into the intake. And then your other one is going to be coming from the fuel line. So that's how it all works. They're all pretty similar. Also, you can see on here, make sure you got a fuel filter, and I always suggest putting a cutoff valve. The real simple assurance. Now let's sneak on down to the last part, which is the throttle. Let's see if I can figure that sucker out. All right, folks, we flopped to the other side of the engine to hook up the throttle. Now the throttle on these Briggs is actually fairly simple, but it's hard to shoot on YouTube because it's so freaking tight. All you do is you stick there's a little plastic piece with a hole in the middle. You just stick it in that hole. Come on. There you go. And then you're gonna have a little clamp right here. Oh, come on. And that clamp goes over the throttle cable. Oh, sorry, this is not the best shot, I know, but I promise we're gonna get it. It's probably all fingers right now. And this just clamps on there, like so, kind of, sort of. We're gonna tighten her down here. This is much easier than what the older lawnmowers setup is. All right, and then you really want it, once you tighten this thing down, you may need to adjust it when you play with the throttle, but I'll let you figure that out. So just making sure it's tight, that way when you push the throttle it doesn't move back and forth. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And folks, that's it. I'm not gonna cover the belts. You can figure that out. I've got, if you look at this specific mower, I'll put a link down below where I swap out the belts and you can see how to loosen and tighten them. But this shows you how to bolt it in, and let's see if she'll get going for me. So stay with me. All right, folks, we've been wrestling this engine all afternoon, and I finally got her strapped in. Now, you might notice this engine from several of my other videos. I have done a complete rebuild on this Briggs & Stratton engine. She's got new piston rings, new head gaskets, new oil seals from nuts to bolts. The whole thing has been rebuilt. Now, I know a lot of y'all, since you just put an engine in your lawnmower, you've never started it before. Either one, it's a brand new engine, or two, you've done a lot of work to the internals of the engine. So a couple of notes. Before you start it, the number one thing I want you to listen to me is make sure there is oil in the engine. Don't start it without oil. That is very, very bad. A lot of new engines get shipped and you think they have oil, but they don't. Trust me. Second off, and also on oil, if you've put new piston rings in the engine, you definitely want to use a break-in oil for the first few mows. Break-in oil doesn't have all the additives in it, and it allows those piston rings to set in there and seal better in the cylinder. I'll put Royal Purple break-in oil down below. I bought it on Amazon for this guy here, 1.5 quarts. Now, when you're starting your engine, it's going to be very frustrating because probably about half of you ain't going to start. A couple of obvious reasons is fuel. You might not be getting fuel to it because a lot of times when you've got an empty carburetor, empty fuel lines, it'll be pushing on an air bubble. So you may want to unhook the fuel line at the carburetor and crank it a few times until that fuel starts spurting out, and then hook up that line. That way you know you've got fuel all the way through the line and she is getting fuel to her. Next thing, spark plug. Make sure you got the spark plug in there. Also, you might get yourself a can of starter fluid. That always helps. Sometimes I get a little shot of courage down there in her throat to get her going. And if it doesn't start, a couple things to check, of course. Make sure it's getting fuel, make sure it's getting spark. But also, sometimes if you've put new push rods or messed with the valve clearances or anything like that, sometimes you screwed up and you've got the valve that didn't really get in the little cup of the lifter, which I did on this one, and it's not actually lifting. So if you won't start and you get frustrated, pull the valve cover off, take a look, make sure both valves are going up and down when you turn the top of the motor. Enough chit-chatting. Let's see if this sucker will start. I've got my fingers crossed. We've had a lot of bad luck lately. All right, we got her cranked up. Come on! Come on! Come on! Folks, there ain't nothing better than that. That thing is humming like a dream. Now, if you've rebuilt your engine with new piston rings and whatnot, just hammer the piss out of it first row. Do full throttle, let it seat in, don't baby it, because the more horsepower, the better. You really want to seat her in. All right, with that, I'm out of here. We're going to get to mowing, and I'm going to sell this baby. Side note, if anybody who knows Mower Mike wants a mower, this sucker is for sale. John Deere green, baby. Brand new engine. All right, Mower Mike out. Talk to you later.